Welcome to another edition of M&BLive. Everybody, I'm Morris Lilienthal with Martinson Beason. I'm here with attorney Joel Dilorenzo of the Dilorenzo Law Firm in Birmingham. And Joel and I are going to be talking about an ongoing new litigation involving the drug and various off-brands and or name brand and generic brands of the drug Zantac. And Joel, I think some of us, probably over the course of our lifetime, if they have taken this drug or,
Sure.
Family members that have either gotten a prescription or maybe an off the brand or just off the shelf at the pharmacy or something, if we had some heartburn. But for those of us that may not know generally exactly what it is, give us just a little background on what this medication is and how long it's been out there and what it's generally used to treat.
Yeah, absolutely. Zantac was released in 1983 as a prescription medication for heartburn, antacid, indigestion. As the same reason that people were using it up until about 6 months ago. Then in the mid 90s, they started to develop a generic off-brand, over-the-counter, off-the-shelf version of it, generally known as ranitidine. Which is the generic form of Zantac, but it's the very same identical chemical makeup. And that's generally what most individuals that we represent currently use. So is the over-the-counter, off-the-shelf that you can buy at Walgreens, Walmart, anywhere else, that version of the Zantac pills or tablets.
Yeah. And so how long, it seems like as long as I can remember, it's been around, and I'm in my early 40s. How long has this medication been around to treat heartburn?
Yes, the prescription version came on the market in 1983. So it's literally been around for well over 40 years almost. Then in the mid 90s, it became, like I said, the available over the counter off the shelf. And people have been using it regularly ever since.
Yeah. Well, I guess, kind of a lot of times what happens when we find out that there's a problem with a medication is a lot of times the government and the FDA gets involved. And I think, a lot of what people understand or may have heard from some of the media coverage of this is that the FDA got involved and they issued a statement, I think earlier this year, asking the manufacturers to recall the drug. Kind of give us some perspective on what was going on with the FDA's involvement and what they requested and why they requested the drug manufacturers pull this off the market.
Yes, earlier this year, well, actually dating back to September of last year, the FDA took a very, very rare step in just ordering a complete recall. A lot of times the FDA will make drug companies put certain warnings on drugs after they've been off the market, but it's rare that FDA says, get this stuff off the market right now. So in April of this year, all of it was pulled off the shelves, and you cannot, if you're a medical doctor, you cannot prescribe Zantac anymore. So Zantac, whether it's off the shelf for Walgreens, Walmart, or through your doctor, it's unavailable due to the FDA Class 1 recall.
So what's your understanding, and can you kind of break it down for us as to why? What's so dangerous in this medication that made them want to recall it?
Yes, and that's a good question. I'm just going to try to break this down in just kind of a real quick 1 minute synopsis, so to speak. Zantac as a pill, whether it's the original from 1983 all the way up until April 2020 Zantac, or the ranitidine, or any of the different forms or off the shelf prescription, all of it combined is basically ranitidine. That's the chemical name for Zantac. Zantac's the prescription brand name. Ranitidine is actually the name of the drug itself, and it has a molecule. Ranitidine is a molecule that when it's exposed to heat or exposed to just time on a shelf, if it stays on a store shelf too long, or in your bathroom cabinet shelf too long, it actually breaks down and becomes what is known as MDMA. And that is a unbelievably dangerous, horribly strong carcinogen for humans. And let me give you just kind of an example of how dangerous MDMA is. We've all heard of arsenic. Arsenic is a poison. It's been around literally for centuries. Arsenic ranks 3 out of 10. On a scale of 10, arsenic is 3 out of 10 for how dangerous it is. MDMA is 9 out of 10. in terms of how dangerous of a carcinogen it is for humans. It's actually, MDMA is actually used to make rocket fuel used by NASA. It is unbelievably dangerous. Yeah, exactly. Being in Huntsville, you're very familiar with NASA. So it is stunning that this, one of the molecules in Zantac or ranitidine, was able to actually, through nothing more than just exposure to heat, or just sitting on the shelf too long, could actually become one of the most dangerous carcinogens known to man in the history of all medicine. It basically transformed into basically just a ticking time bomb. Not just heat in terms of you got to throw it in a fire, heat in terms of your internal body temperature. And obviously Zantac was an oral medication. So individuals that would take Zantac on a regular basis, they were ingesting it, letting it dissolve inside you on a regular daily basis. A lot of folks were taking it 2 or 3 times a day. They were taking literally 2 or 3 times a day a dangerous carcinogen. The FDA has actually said that the allowable amount of MDMA that you are allowed to have in your body, or you should have no more than this in your body, is 96 nanograms a day. 96 nanograms a day. People that were taking Zantac, they found to have up to 47,600 nanograms in their system. It's 495 times the amount allowed to be in your system according to FDA regulations. So how did they find all this out? Basically, at Stanford University, they started conducting some studies because they realized that there was a strange kind of demographic of individuals that were all developing cancers that seemed to be all generally healthy individuals by any other standard, but they were all developing cancers. And the one thing they all had in common was that they were all taking Zantac or off-the-counter Zantac. They tested 5 men and 5 women in the initial study, just very basic. And again, they found that these normally healthy individuals in the prime of their life that all suddenly out of the blue developed cancer had all been taking Zantac for an extended amount of time. And again, FDA says you're allowed to have 96 nanograms of MDMA in your system. You'll be okay. These individuals had anywhere between 47 and 100,000 nanograms in their system, and it was all due to their ingestion of Zantac. So that's kind of a very broad overview of where we are right now, but it's literally a ticking cancer time bomb that none of us knew about until this study was released. And immediately it scared the FDA so much that they said, get it off American shelves, get rid of it. So
yeah, there's a lot of things alarming about what you just talked about, but what I gather, a lot of times, as a society, we hear something's been recalled, or, oh, here's another litigation about this drug or this product or something. And then it's just kind of like, some recalls are done that it's kind of like, well, this could happen, or this shelf could fall over, and it's happened to 2 or 3 people. This is not that situation. We've got a situation that the very core and what this drug is made of as cancer causing agents. And because of the nature of human physiology and taking it, and because most of the time people buy this and they may take it for a few days, and then they may wait for a few days, it's going to sit on the shelf at their home, and it's very much greater likelihood of causing cancer than what we know. And this is a much more serious recall than some people may just kind of say, oh, well, the baby stroller has been recalled about something, only 2 injuries out of all the 200,000. This is not that kind of case, Joel. No. This is a situation where we've got a product that the FDA really threw up a red flag and said, we're going to recall it, and you can't issue it and prescribe it any longer.
It's done. It is illegal to write a prescription for Zantac. They are not manufacturing it anymore. There is a 100% across the country ban on usage and or selling of Zantac or any of the generic forms. It's that dangerous because, again, it is essentially, if you want to look at it in kind of a apples to apples comparison, it is essentially on a daily basis the essential same amount of NDMA going into your system as though you were actually drinking rocket fuel. That is how horrible they found Zantac to be.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
As a part of the studies and things that are coming out now, as more research is being done on people who have taken this drug over the years, and knowing that some of the agents as a part of the medication were cancer causing agents, carcinogens, what are some of the things that we're seeing? What types of cancers are we seeing that are probably being linked to this? Have we gotten some of those, Joel, where we've seen?
Yes, that's a great question. The list is still kind of ongoing because, again, with this just being officially pulled off the shelves in April, we have been diving in to the deep end, trying to meet regularly with our own science experts, our own carcinogen oncologist experts, to figure out exactly what types of cancer this could cause. And to say that there are numerous types of cancer is an understatement. I've written down some of the most common ones here. If you can just let me read off my list.
Sure.
The first is bladder cancer. Breast cancer is very common. Blood, leukemia type cancers we think are going to be linked. Obviously, colon, rectal cancers, esophageal, kidney, liver, lung, pancreatic, prostate, really anything between the top of the breastplate down to the upper pelvic region, any parts of the body in their stomach, testicular, uterine, intestinal, stomach. And we think it may also be linked in some way to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Again, this is one of the most dangerous molecules that the FDA has ever discovered in what we all thought was just a harmless antacid product. However, we have reason to believe that the makers of Zantac and all of the generic manufacturers probably had reason to believe, and if not, they should have known that this molecule, ranitidine, when exposed to heat or left on a shelf too long, can become literally one of the most dangerous things you could possibly ingest as a human.
Yeah. Well, and like a lot of things, kind of what we're dealing with in today's times is with COVID, in terms of we're learning as we're going along. I think we're doing a lot of that with the Zantac recall, and that we're kind of, as more study and research is being done by scientists and medical doctors, we're learning that there may be a link between various cancers. As I know you and I spoke when we originally spoke a few months ago about this recall and potential clients of ours that may have suffered as a result of this, taking this medication. What we know now here in August is a little different than what we knew in May in terms of things. And so, I think what we would say to anyone listening is that if you have taken, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, but if you have taken Zantac in one form or fashion, and we'll talk a little bit more about it, specifically how, and you suffered some type of cancer, it's certainly something that I think would be worth you looking into a little bit more about, and seeing if there is some potential link there that you may have a claim. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. That kind of brings me to my next point is really what type of usage, what type of Zantac usage, and what type of diagnosis would you need in order to possibly pursue a claim or a lawsuit against the makers of Zantac. And that's kind of a somewhat of a moving target right now. We're still trying to kind of box in the parameters on what that exactly entails, but in a kind of a broad way to state it, we think you probably need to be taking Zantac for at least a year. And I can assure you that if not every single one of our current clients that we represent, they kind of laugh when I say, have you been taking it for at least a year? And they say, Joel, I've been taking this for 10 or 15 years. Yeah. So at least a year of fairly regular usage, daily or several times a week usage, leading up to a cancer diagnosis from one of those cancers that we just discussed. It doesn't matter if it's prescription Zantac that your doctor wrote for you. It doesn't matter if It was just you started developing heartburn or indigestion, and you started using it just because you went down to the local CVS or Walgreens and bought it off the shelf. It doesn't matter. It's the very same chemical makeup. Whether your doctor wrote you the prescription or you bought it from Walgreens, it's the same thing. In fact, I would say the largest majority, 80% or more of our current clients, never got a prescription for it. They just realized they could kind of self-diagnose and say, hey, I've got heartburn and indigestion. I'm going to go buy some Zantac. And you can get it anywhere. You can get it at Walmart, Walgreens, CVS. So they just said, hey, I'd pick it up wherever I happen to be. I needed some more. It's the same stuff. A lot of our clients are women, and they carry their purse everywhere they go. Well, if they happen to be running in somewhere and they leave their purse in the car, that is exposing the Zantac in their purse to extremely high heats. A lot of times, a lot of our clients, they're on job sites, and their jobs are stressful, as we're all experiencing these days. And they just leave their Zantac in their back pocket. Well, for 8 to 10 hours a day, that person would have a pack of Zantac just getting hotter and hotter and harder as the day goes on. And they take it just without having any idea that what they were doing was literally just taking this chemical. So kind of as a broad framework, you had to be taking it for about a year or longer. And it does not matter in terms of whether you will have a good case. It does not matter whether or not you were taking prescription Zantac that was prescribed by a doctor. The cases where someone just went and started buying it regularly at Walgreens or Walmart will be as good of a case. You don't have to still have the bottles. You don't still have to have proof of purchase. Because quite honestly, I buy, over-the-counter medication all the time from CVS, and I don't keep the bottle. Once I'm done with it, I throw it away. Same thing in this case. You don't have to have a stockpile of old empty Zantac or ranitidine bottles in order to qualify for these cases. As long as you can honestly attest to the fact that you were taking Zantac or ranitidine or whatever you were buying off the shelves, and then you later developed one of the cancers, you will qualify, and I think you'd have a very strong case.
Yeah. What about in terms of timeframes, Joel? In terms of, we talked earlier about that this drug has been on the market for a really long period of time, and even the off-brand labels and the generic and the store-buying labels have been out there for a long time now. I mean, if you get the drug in 2010 or 2015, and then you develop one of these types of cancers afterwards, would that still be something that you would potentially have a claim for?
Absolutely. It doesn't matter. For this reason, in most states, Alabama is one of them. It has a discovery rule, and there is no way anybody could have reasonably discovered that Zantac. Hell, the scientists themselves didn't even realize it. The FDA didn't even realize it until September of 2019. So it doesn't matter if you were taking it back in 2005, 2000, 2010, and then developed cancer. It doesn't matter if you had cancer and you're now in remission. If you were taking Zantac and had a cancer diagnosis, whether it's 10, 15, 20 years ago, I am taking the position that you will still have a strong, viable case against the makers of Zantac. It's just one other thing. Let me jump in real quick. These cases are not against your family. They won't be against the family prescribing doctors. The doctors had no idea. The FDA didn't even know. So this was only going to be against the manufacturers. This is not going to involve your doctors. Trust me, the doctors were as eager to stop prescribing it as anybody once they heard about what the FDA found out about how dangerous this was. So the doctors are completely out of this litigation. It's just against the manufacturer.
That's right. The only people who had the knowledge here that there was a problem would have been the manufacturers.
Exactly. Correct.
I guess I'm trying to think. The next question that I think that I get, and I know that you get when we've handled similar claims involving what you and I might call a mass tort, which is legal mumbo jumbo for a lot of people who may have used the same medication or something, this is not a class action, right?
It's not a class action.
Each
No.
person has their own individual claim, because, you know, what I hear from friends and when they ask me questions about recalls and things is that, well, you know, I don't want to be a part of that class action. I'm not going to get anything really out of it. I don't know, the lawyers get paid out of it. Talk to us a little bit about how each claim's different and each person has their own individual claim.
That is a great point. This is not a class action where 5-10 years from now you're going to open your mailbox and have a check for $15. This is a mass tort, which is similar to the extent that the defendant in all of these cases or the defendants are all going to be the same. However, the difference in these cases is each individual client is going to have his or her own individual lawsuit against the manufacturer, or in some cases, the distributor of the Zantac or the generic off-the-shelf ranitidine. It does two things. One, it makes sure that the individual in his or her own lawsuit we are going after the manufacturer or distributor based on his or her injury. In other words, one client may have breast cancer, another individual may have uterine cancer.
Right.
One client may have had to have 3 or 4 different surgeries and 20 rounds of chemo. Another individual may have only had to have 1 round of chemo. Everybody's case is going to be different, and you are going to be we are seeking awards once these cases go to trial for each individual based on his or her injuries. So it's not a conglomerate where you're just thrown in a group and roll the dice and hope for the best. You are going to be compensated for what this drug did to you personally, individually in your own lawsuit.
Yeah, and that's a big difference, folks. If you're watching this or you're speaking to somebody who may have some questions because they took Zantac or generic and developed satellite developed cancer, that this person has their own individual claim. And, you know, because, you know, we all know people, you know, maybe they didn't take Zantac, but we all know people, unfortunately, that cancer's touched our lives. And some people do and make recoveries, and some people don't, and or make better recoveries. So each person's claim is going to be a little different. And and Joel, is there anything else in terms of, you know, that you're seeing from clients that right now, that questions that you may want to let people who may have questions about this litigation know that we hadn't touched on?
Other than the fact that if you have been diagnosed with cancer at any point and you were a fairly regular user of Zantac for at least a year, it is absolutely worth contacting us, and we'll talk to you, go over your options. There's no obligation. Chat with us. At the very least, I am thrilled that the FDA made the very wise decision to pull this off the market. It is a new litigation. Like I said, the FDA, the product was only pulled off the market in April.
Yeah.
So it's new. That being said, there are lots of cases already being filed. It is going to be a big litigation, but as of right now, we are at the stage of the litigation right now where we are already learning a lot from our own, just based on meetings that we're having with our own experts about what the makers of Zantac likely knew. And it is scary. This was not just 1 or 2 bad batches of Zantac that accidentally came off the assembly line and may have affected somebody back in 2014, and it was a one-off deal. This has been a consistent pattern since it went on the market, since 1983. There are going to be a huge number of claimants involved in this litigation simply due to the fact that the time span is from 1983 until April of this year. You can imagine how many people were taking Zantac in that time. So again, time is of the essence to the extent that getting in this litigation sooner, if you qualify, will be to your advantage. So that's what I would recommend to anybody listening to this.
Yeah, folks, and we'll put a link here in the comments to the video to a link to some website with more information about this and more the list of the types of cancers is to date that we believe may be associated with taking this medication with Zantac. And you know, the other thing I'd say is, you know, you may have individual questions that were not answered here. So reach out, Joel or myself or some other attorney that's experienced in these cases would be glad to speak to you about this. But the sooner you act, the better it is in your interest to try to get medical records that would be needed to pursue a claim. And if you took a prescription, to get prescription records. And again, you don't have to, but records that need to be requested, the sooner the better. So Joel, I want to thank you for taking time as always to speak to us and kind of help educate us on what's going on with this litigation. And certainly folks, stay tuned, because as Joel said, this is just in the infancy. We're only about 4 months into when the drug's been recalled. So things are going to develop and do, but the sooner you act, the faster you act, I think the better off you'll be to protect your rights if you've got it. And if you know someone who has had cancer, a family member, friend, you want to apprise them of this if you think they may have taken this drug so they can protect their rights.
And Morris, let me add one other thing. If you have a family member that may have passed away from cancer that you know was a regular Zantac user, please feel free to reach out to us as well. I mean, that is, we are investigating anybody that may have unfortunately passed away due to a cancer diagnosis that was a Zantac user as well. So this is going to be a very wide-ranging litigation, but we think the makers need to be held accountable, because it is scary that in this day and age there was a medication on the shelves at Walgreens or prescribed by a doctor that could literally increase your risk of cancer by 400 times. So please call us.
Yeah. Thanks, Joel. We appreciate it, folks. Take care. Be safe out there. And if you've got questions, then reach out. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.